Good afternoon. I'm on day 9 of my road trip here in San Diego. Beautiful afternoon. It's the Design Well Conference. I'm taking a moment to talk a little bit about what I've learned regarding forecasting. And I want to look at 6 categories to help you look at a process of triangulating other sources or inputs to reduce the risk on the number that you've signed up to do for the year. You've either signed up with your manufacturer or internally you're committing resources. But let's take another look at how to manage that. So I'm going to show you the 6 categories. Here they are. It's base business, your projects, the forecasting pipeline, your farmers, your hunters, and dormant accounts. So the foundation of this is reducing risk, of course. And I start with predictable business, and that's the base accounts. I typically look at a 3 to 5 year range, and I look back at what the average amount of business has come out of just churn and regular projects from this existing base. So assuming, for example, you've got 30 million a year is your base. You've got 90 million to work with. Let's round it off to 100 million. So you start out looking at, well, do I average 5%, 10%, and then look at the accounts specifically on whether you're expecting growth, stability, or decline. So that's your foundation number. Your second are live projects, and I look primarily at projects with 80% probability. And I use a process, I've used the strategic account model, the blue sheets, to really make sure we've got decision makers we're working with, key influencers. And I knew if I didn't have a key coach on the inside, it's automatically under a 50% probability. So that's number 2. Number 3 is the actual forecast. And typically I found anything outside of 90 days, it really dropped off in terms of my sales force's ability to give me really good knowledge. So we tightened that number up and we looked at that 90-day window, and I oftentimes look at a certain ratio. If I've got $100 million in the pipeline, I'm closing 30% on average. I use that and I just roll it over 2 or 3 times a year depending on what my cycle is, and I use that as my pipeline number, assuming I'm consistent with my new business development. 4th category, my farmers, the dependable ones. Now, I've stripped out all of these other numbers and I look at what is the value add they might be able to bring to their accounts. And I work with them specifically and I walk them through their number of predictability, and I said, okay, based on what we see here, we're expecting you minimum to reach this number. What is your plan to increase that and by how much? So that becomes factor 4. Factor 5 are the hunters. Now these people bring in, they're the swing. So I really have to buffer my expectations here because a lot of times they have high gains and big wins and big losses. But again, having a process walking through, taking these numbers out and getting them into thinking through this will help you with the strategic planning process, blue sheets, to really up your probability. And then the last item, kind of the ace in the hole, are your dormant accounts. And these are accounts that have been ignored, have gone asleep. My first $1 million came from my first year as a dealer salesperson with the general manager giving me at the time a Rolodex and going through the Rolodex, fishing for new opportunity in old accounts. These are accounts we have relationships with. When I was VP of distribution for a manufacturer, I would go in at what I typically found, which surprised me, is that they have an account list of up to 1,000 companies they've done business with, but they only focus on about 20 at a time are active. The rest are typically ignored. So going into that list is found opportunity. So we have this number. I have my confidence. Now I go back to the manufacturer. If they've given me a number that's a lot that's really outside my confidence level with these numbers, I've got leverage. I've got rationale to either negotiate for deeper discounting, additional mock-ups, or manage that number better. So I hope this helps. I hope it shows you some ways to triangulate these numbers as you go into the year. Forecasting is the make it or break it skill for management. If you forecast well, then you can invest properly to make that forecast. But if you depend too much on just the people generating the business, they don't know how to forecast. And your manufacturer doesn't know how to forecast. You need to triangulate and use this database, all the rich data you have, to reduce the risk. I hope this helps. Take care.